Hello, Donna here. Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Now, this particular ring was a request. I had shown it in another tutorial, and so this I am going to do because I'm going to keep my promise. Now, this is a box ring, and let me take the top off of this one. This is Bunicord here, and that's what secures the lid or the top. Now, this one is a little bit different. It has these two channels, and I found that it's not necessary to do that anymore, so we won't be doing that. Now, in this particular one is a very tiny, it's a tiny yellow diamond. So this is my diamond ring, because it certainly is a diamond ring, but it's probably not like any diamond ring you've ever seen before, because a diamond is hidden in the box. Now here is another one. Let me slide and see, this one does not have the channels on the top. It's really not necessary. But in this box ring, I've just tucked a little garnet. So you can put anything in there you want. Of course, it's a pretty tiny space, pretty tiny box. So you're not going to be able to put anything terribly large in it. And that's how you secure it. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be showing you how to make the little box ring. Now what you're going to need to make is a template. Now here is a template. And if you look at the yellow area, that is what the template is shaped like. This was the first one I made today, and so it's very fussy. There are a lot of unnecessary lines because I hadn't made one in a while, so I usually have to start from the beginning, make it, and then say, oh, okay, I remember what I did. And so here is a much simplified version without a lot of extra effort. So we're going to make this. So what you're going to need is something to make a template with. Now, I have a lot of old business cards, and I used to throw them away, but I find that they're quite useful for making templates like this, even in class. You know, if I'm teaching a class and Cato Polyclay is providing the clay, I want to make sure my students have enough clay to do the entire project. So sometimes I will work things out so that I use my business cards as a measuring device, so it keeps us all on the same page. Much easier to for clay management, but if you give everybody the same measurement tool. So I use business cards a lot for that. Now you're going to need something that will give you the whole size for your finger size, your ring size. And this is my acrylic template. I had this made. These are US full sizes, so they run from 4 to 12. Now, they're actually clear, but I sand the back, the smooth side, with coarse grit sandpaper so that it doesn't stick to the clay. I always do this. Only one side needs to be sanded, and that is the totally smooth side. This side, the right side, you run your fingers across and you will feel all of the letters and the numbers and the measurement. Okay, then you're going to need a nice ruler, and this is my favorite ruler. This is the Westcott ruler, and it is usually clear as well, but I sand the back of it so that it doesn't stick to clay as much. And I love this because it's ruled, and that's what we're going to be using when we draw our template. Of course, you're going to need a pen. So let's get started. First, take your card. But actually, let me step back. First, you're going to have to know your ring size. So my ring size is actually 7 if I stick it through the template. But in my experience, the holes are always too small. So I'm going to jump up to a size 8 instead. Now I'm going to take my size 8 and I'm going to try to center it on the business card like so. All right. I'm going to draw the size 8 with the pen, And then I'm going to indicate where the halfway point is in the adjacent sizes. I'm going to move over to my ruler, lay the ruler across the two sizes, and I'm going to make a center line. This can be a solid line, it can be dotted. Today, I'm making it a center line. Okay, now you have choices as to how big the box is above the ring hole, and you can see here that these are different. This one is much taller, not much, but it is taller than this one. So you can make that decision for yourself. Now I am going to take and lie my ruler across, and I'm not going to make this terribly tall, but I am going to make it 1/2 inch above the top of the ring hole. There we go. Now let's flip it over and let's draw the bottom. Now the bottom is not as tall, so I think today I'm going to make this about 3/16. This is an 1/8, and then half would be 1/16. So let me draw that. So that's the bottom. Okay, so at this point, I am just going to make an angle. And I'm going to leave probably between a 1/16 and an 1/8 from the side of the hole to the outside of the template. Now, this doesn't have to be terribly wide. The clay is certainly sturdy enough. The box is going to be thick enough that you don't have to make this very wide. There's nothing worse than having a ring where you just cannot close your fingers around the ring, right? You don't want this type of thing happening, and it's totally unnecessary. So you can make it quite thin. Now, to establish what that line is and reproduce it on the other side, of course, I'm just going to lay my ruler across that center line. And this is approximately, there's 1/2 inch and then 1/16. So at 1/2 inch plus 1/16, that's where one cut is. Now let's turn it over. Lay the ruler back along that line, that center line. So you see the center line is quite important. Okay, so it appears to be about 3/8 of an inch, maybe a touch less. 1, 2, 3, and just a tad less. Now let's join these two marks. Like so, and that is our template. Now, there's one last thing we have to do, and that is we have to draw a dot for wherever this cord is going to be drilled and attached, okay? This is important, that little hole, because, and let's just draw the actual maximum size that we can see having a box or cutting out inside. And I would say the maximum that I will cut out will be right there, okay? This box will be no deeper than that line, or the cutout will be no deeper than that line. So I'm going to try to find the center point here between this, this, and this, and I will draw one dot. And you only need to draw one because we will pierce this dot and we will transfer it to the other side. So we have this dot in exactly the same place on the two sides, okay? you might want to write what size it is and the template. Okay, so let's use the template. I'm going to cut it out and then I'll be back. So I'm back. Honestly, I am reshooting the tutorial from this point forward because I realized I could really do a better job and I could make it more clear and easier. So that's why my nails are not black today. They are a very dark gray because I just did them. All right, so now we're ready to make the sides, the two sides of our box ring. So I'm going to take some black clay, and this has been rolled through setting 3 on my pasta machine. You know, I think I'm going to roll it through 4. I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. What you don't want is you don't want it to be too terribly thin. So I would say a medium thin setting is ideal. Let me reset my machine. All right, so this feels good. It's not too thick and it is not too thin. So I'm going to press it onto my ceramic tile, trim and trim, just because the extra clay does get in the way. Now, if you look at the sheet itself, you can see it has these very faint ripples. I don't like them, so I'm going to take my brass rod and I'm going to roll and roll simply to eliminate them. They're not a huge deal, but I think you would find that if you left them, even though they look very faint here, and they are faint, actually eliminating them when you sand is really not the easiest thing to do. And why set yourself up for that if you can take care of it when the clay is raw? Okay, that looks good. Now we're going to cut 2 of these. So I'm going to take this and I am just going to put it right here, way on the edge. I'm going to leave space between the 2. Now, first I'm going to take a little needle tool and I'm going to pierce north, south, east, and west, and that little dot. All right, so let's trim around the edge. Try to cut straight down. Okay, you know, while the clay is raw, I'm going to lift this up and I'm going to turn this over and put it back on the clay, and I'm going to pierce the hole on the other side. So now I have pierced the 2 holes that the cord will go through. These 4 holes, of course, represent the ring hole, the actual hole for the ring. All right, so let's repeat that. I'm going to take this and put it over here. Going to pierce north, south, east, and west. And pierce that 1 hole, our cord hole. Now I will take my blade and cut around the perimeter. pick this up, flip it over, put it back down, and then pierce the place where the cord will go through on the other side. Now I have the 4, because you see, once we get the ring together and it's cured, I'm going to be drilling each of these halfway through, hoping that they meet in the middle, and then we will have the hole drilled through, into which we will glue our cord. All right, so now I'm going to take my template, and my template's a little messy. I didn't really clean it from yesterday. I'm going to take my acupuncture tool, centering size 8 over those 4 pierced holes, and I will just cut around. And remove the cutout. Now you saw how difficult it was to get that out, so we know that the clay is pretty well stuck in there, but you know, once you get it started, it's not bad. There we go. Peel it out. Okay, I will repeat with the other. And then the sides will be ready to be cured. I'm going to cure this for 30 minutes at 300 degrees from a cold oven. Okay, so in they'll go. When they're done, I'll be back. So I'm back, and I've pulled this out of the oven, and you know, as I look at it, the surface is dull. Now, let me tell you something about my clay. When the clay has been exposed to temperatures that are extremely high, it's very shiny like that. But of course, that exposure to those high temperatures also means that it's very strong. This is a situation where I'm not exactly sure if the clay is totally cured. I'm just not. I did it for a half an hour at 300, and yesterday I made this ring at the same temperature setting, so it was fine yesterday. Now, our ovens are pretty temperamental things, or they can be, and a lot depends on the amount of clay you have in an oven, whether there's a cool breeze that blows by your oven and the temperature spikes. I mean, they're a little temperamental. They are not highly calibrated instruments, you know. There's a range. When you cure your pieces in the oven, the temperature fluctuates. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. You may set it at 300, but it may go up to 310, it may go down to 280, and it just kind of goes up and down like that. Now, that's just not because our ovens are cheap ovens, and there are better ovens to have, although I'm sure there are. But I watched a program with Samin Nosrat, who did salt, fat, acid, heat, and I'm sure that her oven must cost like 20 times what my convection oven costs. And she commented about the fact that her oven has hot spots and cool spots, and you know, so they're all different. Anyway, all that is kind of a long way to say that perhaps I should have placed a piece of black clay, just small right there. as just a test strip. I often think that, and I rarely do it. So I'm just going to test on here, because the worst thing that can happen is that this cracks. Then I have to go and do it again. So I'm going to take my little drill, and I think this might be about, maybe 1 millimeter drill. And I'm just going to take it. I'm going to drill these holes anyway. So I'm going to carefully drill this out and see what the clay that I'm drilling out is like, and see whether the quality of the hole is good, or if I have these little chips. Okay, now let me look at this little guy here and see if I can roll it in my fingers and sort of pulverize it, or if it stays curled like that. And you see it just crumbled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back down, and I'm going to return this to the oven. I'm going to raise my temperature just a wee bit. Now, I'm not too worried about it if it's, if it turns into this, because I'm working with black clay. I would be far more careful if I was working with white or other colors. But since I'm working with black, this is not a problem. I can sand that and it will be fine. The important thing now is that these pieces are cured. So I'll be back. So here are the pieces. What I did was I went back to my good old Thermo Pro. Sometimes I have to tell you, I just get lazy. I just fly by the seat of my pants. And, I have to be reminded that I have to come back down to earth. All right, so what I did was I put this in the oven. I elevated the temperature. I raised it a little bit. And once the temperature got up to 300 degrees, I timed it out at 10 minutes. And I did do what I said I should have done, which was to put a test piece here. Now let's look at these. They're still warm. Now, these were slightly shiny, but because I see some little bumps and lumps, what I did was I turned it over immediately and I pressed on it to flatten them out, to push any air out and make the surface as flat as I could. And that worked pretty well, but it also kind of dulled the surface. Now here is what the clay looked like coming out of the oven. So I know it's cured. This is cured clay. Now it's still warm, but I can show you what it's like. Maybe it's kind of rubbery, so it's not wanting to let me do a clean drill to drill cleanly. So let's take a carving tool and just carve a long line. Now I'm looking at this, it's not crumbly, it's holding together in one piece. And this means that my clay is cured. Remember before, I took that little bit and I just took it in my fingers and I rolled my fingers like so, and the piece basically crumbled. But when the clay is cured, if you do that, it holds together. It doesn't crumble or fall apart. So now I do know that these are cured. All right. And this sample thing, I forget. I try to remind myself, I forget. But it's never a bad idea to take a little bit of clay, throw it in the oven with your pieces, and that will be something that you can test. You can carve it, you can drill it, you can bend it, you can see if it's going to break and whether your clay is cured. All right, so let's let these cool, and then we'll move on to the next step. So our pieces are, they're actually cool, they're not cold. So we're going to move on. Now it's time to fill the space between our two sides. We're going to put clay in between them. Now you have options. What you do want is the top to be the widest part. Now you could make it straight down like a block, but I don't see any reason to do that. I think it's more comfortable if it tapers and narrows at the base. So the way I do that is, first I'm going to take this round cutter, and it's smaller than the opening, but I'm just going to put it on this. Oh, let me explain this. Now, this is actually not as wide as these. This is 3 sheets of clay rolled through the thickest setting of my pasta machine. I'm going to turn this too because this is the widest part. You can make it wider. You can even make it narrower if you wish. All right. And I'm working on deli paper that I used before for something else. All right, there we go. So now what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to do this first. I'm going to taper it while it's a block. And I'm going to do that by just taking my acrylic rod and rolling like so. Let's turn it over. And once again, roll it like so. And roll it from the side. It's lower. The rod is actually lower on the right than it is on the left. Turn it. Repeat. Do the same thing. And this is how you arrive at what the ring will look like from the side. Okay. Now I'm going to take one of the sides, the cured sides, and I'm going to apply poly paste around the base. And where I think the box will be, I'm not going to put any poly paste. So I don't know if you can see that, but what I am hoping to make is a box in this space. And it may be a little smaller. It will not be larger than that. All right, so now I'm going to take and just position this over. And you see I'm a little crooked? Well, what that means if I'm crooked is that, of course, the sides will be off a bit. So you want to make sure that you have this running very straight and true with this angle that you cut. All right, so let's cut, oops. Let's cut the 4 sides. Try to cut straight down. Like so. All right, now I'm turning it around, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take our template again. I'm going to put that there, and basically that just tells me that I'm not going to cut any deeper than that, that I will have to cut somewhere, perhaps up in this area. Well, let me just quickly draw where I will cut. like so. Okay, now that is where I'm going to cut out for the box. And how do I cut the box? Here you can see it. Well, the easiest way I found is actually to use a square cutter. Now I'm going to take water and I'm going to spray the outside of the cutter just a bit. And I'm going to take it and cut straight down and then pull it out. Eject, and I think I'll put a little more water on just so the clay doesn't stick to the cutter. Okay. Makes it a bit easier. Set that aside, and now I have cut the actual box from the clay. Now you're going to just dry it off. You don't want to be putting the other side on wet clay. All right, so let's let that dry, but I will put poly paste on this side. The thing about poly paste too, I mean, I really love the stuff, but you want to make sure you don't get too much on because it doesn't dry clear, okay? And so you don't want white blobs of poly paste showing in places you don't want. Now let's put this over. And squeeze. Just squeeze all over. A little bit of water there, but I didn't see any water on the clay. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now, if I wanted it thinner at the base, I would just keep pressing these together, just pulling them together. Now, this ring is a good example. I have another tutorial on making rings like this. Well, I made the two sides and then put the raw clay in the middle, and I just kept bringing them together. This one came to a point, this one not quite so much. But you can do the same thing here if you want it much thinner at the base. You just keep squeezing, just gently squeezing, like so, and you will make the base thinner and the taper more, make the sides more angled, you know, make this a steeper slope. All right, so let's trim away now. So I'm going to take, and I want to trim the excess clay here first. Like so. Now, if you're looking, see, you can see that this is not actually straight. It's kind of angled this way, and so is this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down and out a little bit. And let me check this side. This side is better. Once again, lay it on that side and trim away the excess. All right, now I'm going to take and put it flat on the box end, like so. And that looks pretty good. Now I will take my blade and I'm just going to take, and it is just running along the sides like so. Let's do the other side. And a cut like that. Now I'm going to cut away that end, turn it over, and repeat. And you know, the blade just glides along the cured edge. Now, I'm going to put my finger at the end and cut the excess from the bottom. And believe me, this piece is going to be sanded and sanded and sanded, so. All right, now here I can see that this side is thinner than this one, so I'm going to pull it out a bit so that they're closer to the same. All right, now I'm going to trim away, because what I did basically was push the clay outside. Or push it out beyond the sides, beyond the cured sides. You can see I just pushed it. All right, now I'm going to trim. All right, so that is better. They are more equal. They're more the same. Now let's trim the inside, or the opening here. Take your scalpel and just glide it along, and just hold the ring itself very gingerly, carefully. You know, there are ways of holding things, and this is one of those ways where you're almost not touching it. I'm holding it, and I'm supporting it. But truth be told, I am using very little pressure as I hold, right? Because if I were to squeeze and exert any force, I would really ruin it. Now, all right, and I'm going to stop even though it's not perfect, because I will sand the opening. Okay, I lied. I just want to get this one little piece out. All right, so there we have it. To me, it feels a little bit skewed this way. So it's not too late to make small corrections, which I just did. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to pop this in the oven again, then I will be back. So this is cured. I pulled it out of the oven and it's cool, so now I'm going to sand it. I'm going to use the Abranet P80. It's very, very rough. And as you can see, I've done the top so far. See how light it is? It really scratches the surface. But once you sand, if you put Nivea on it, that very greasy cream, and you let it soak in, it turns into this really nice matte finish. All right, so I'm just going to sand each side against the Abra net. And I've just put it right on my marble work surface. And it takes the clay down very, very quickly. So you're going to want to check often. Make sure you're not sanding too much away. Sand the other side. And of course, I will sand the whole piece, every side, and I will sand the opening. And the way you do that is you just take a brass rod or a big stick or something like that, and you're just going to roll it up like so. Put it in the opening, and then sand it like this. Very easy. I really like this Abra net because it just takes the clay down so fast. Now, let's say I wanted to make this high gloss. Well, I sure wouldn't start with P80 because there is absolutely no way, if you start with this, that you're going to get to a high gloss finish. Well, I won't say no way, but it's going to take a lot of work, And I'm not honestly sure you would get there. So I'm going to keep sanding every plane, sand the opening, and then I will be back. Now it's time to make the lid. Now if you look at the lid, it's a flat top. You turn it over, it has another smaller rectangle of clay. That rectangle happens to fit right in the box. Okay, so it can't really move too much. And then, of course, the rubber cord is what secures the whole thing. But we have to make this lid. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take clay. This has been rolled through, I think, setting number 4. What I'm going to do is put it down. And by the way, I sanded the whole thing, bottom. And I'm going to take and just press it onto the clay, and I've just transferred this box opening onto this sheet of clay. Now I'm going to cut around it. Like so. And let's see. Yeah, we fit. Fits fine. Okay, so this is a sheet of clay rolled through setting number 3. Now the first thing I'm going to do is eliminate those little ripples in the surface. I picked up a little bit of the sanding, little bits of the sanding dust, so I'm going to turn it over. Smooth this side, and this smooth side is going to go right on the tile. All right. Now let's take this, and you're going to pick it off the paper like so. Just pick it up off the paper and lay it on. You don't want to flip it over. Just lay it right there on the clay. All right, now let's take the box, put it over on top. You Might have to flip it over to find the right way, or the way it fits best. Okay, and that seems to be it. Now I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to cut around. And I'm kind of following the same angle as the side. And of course, this is going to have to be sanded after it's cured. And I think that looks pretty good. Not too bad. All right, so that kind of fell off, but that's fine because now this piece will be cured in the oven. Then I'll be back. So I put it in the oven. There is no need to wait until it's out because we have things to do to the bottom of the ring. Now, all of these 4 holes need to be drilled. So I'm going to take this drill, which is about 1 and maybe 1/2 millimeter. I'm going to seat it in one of the holes and I'm going to try to drill straight through. The goal is for this hole that I'm drilling to meet the hole directly opposite on the other side. Okay, I'm going to turn it over. Now I'm going to enter and I'm going to aim at the exact corresponding spot on the other side. This hole goes all the way through. I haven't made it yet. Oh, I think I might have. Oh, I think perhaps I did. All right, so let me take another longer needle. Okay, and see if I can get all the way through. And yes, indeed, I can. Now I'm going to go to a 2 millimeter drill bit, which is right here. And I will start to drill. Now, the thing is, once your bit catches the clay, you really don't have to push very hard because the bit itself starts pulling itself through the clay. Now, as a general rule, I will tell you whenever you drill anything, drill slow. See all of this coming out of that hole? If you drill too fast, it has nowhere to go. It doesn't, you're not giving it a chance to escape. So always drill slow and steady. All right, so there's the hole all the way through. I think you can see all the way through. Now I will repeat with the other side with this one, starting with the smaller bit and then moving to the larger bit. but you don't have to watch me because you saw it once. So let's move on to something else. Now, I mentioned the Nivea cream before, so I might as well put it on now. And then as we're working through finishing, you can see how the finish changes. All right. Now, yes, you will have to redo it, maybe. It is not a permanent finish, but you know, the cream is inexpensive, it's non-toxic, and it is so simple to use that I really think it's a good solution. I like it better than toxic materials. Okay, and I put Nivea on these. They looked just exactly like this one. And I can't even tell you how long ago it's been, but it's been a long time. I made these rings years ago. So you can see that the effect that the Nivea cream has on the clay doesn't just evaporate or go away. It stays with the clay. Okay. It'll continue to soak in, and then it'll leave that nice matte black finish. All right, so let me drill the other hole, and then I will be back. Now here we have the lid. I took it off the tile, and I put it on the box, and you can see that it's quite a bit darker and it's shiny. So I'm going to sand the top, and of course I'm going to sand the four sides. Then I will be back. Okay, I'm back. And I'm back way sooner, right? Now, when I sand this, I realized I should tell you, I sand it with the lid on the box. So I'm holding it and I'm sanding like so. Sanding the side of the box as well as the side of the lid. You see? Okay, might need a little more. Now let's sand the other side. And then, of course, this has to be sanded, this side, and this. There are times when the lid fits so well, there's no movement of the lid while it's on the box. And I'll show you something. This moves a little bit, you can see. See how it's just moving a bit? Well, sometimes these little lids fit so tight, there's no movement at all. And when that happens, it's actually easier to sand than when there's any play in the lid. Okay, just do the best you can to sand it down. And sometimes the fit will be perfect, and other times it's just not going to be quite perfect, but I don't think it makes a huge difference. Okay, there we go. Let's do the other side. Of course, the goal is the tight fit, but doesn't always happen. All right, So I will sand the top and then I will be back. I think the lid looks just fine. I sanded it and it will be fine, especially after we get these rubber straps around that will hold it into place. Okay, I'm going to take that off, set it aside, because now we have to measure. We have to measure how long the straps should be, because you want them to be tight. You don't want them to be so tight, but we want them to be tight. Otherwise, the lid may fall off. All right, so I've got the end of the cord, and it's just even with the top. I think you can see that. So I'm going to take and wrap this all the way around. And where it meets the hole, I'm going to cut, I think. Not the greatest scissors. Now, both of these pieces should be exactly the same length. Okay. Now the first thing I'm going to do is take and glue one end in halfway. All right. Now here's the thing. That hole is exactly 2 millimeters, and this cord, which is not hollow, it's solid, is also exactly 2. See, even though it's dry and there's no glue on there, it's a little bit difficult to get it in. You've got to wiggle it around to get it in. Well, I'd really like that to be a bit easier to do. So I'm going to take my very bad scissors and I'm just going to make an angled cut. And it's not real severe. It's not real steep. It's just, it's still pretty blunt there. But I think that having that is going to make it easier to get this cord end in, and that's what I want. So let's kind of measure where halfway is. Halfway appears to be about there. So I'm going to take the CA glue, and this is Loctite gel glue. I'll put some on. Whoops. I'd like to get the cap back on. And I'm going to feed it through to approximately there. I think that's where half is. I apologize, I put a little bit too much glue on. When I did it before, and I decided I had to do it again. One of the reasons was because I really made a mess of the glue. All right, half is probably about right there. So let me just get it in. Like so. Okay, so the two cords are now secured on one side. Now, the next thing I have to do is I have to take this end and I have to glue it in the hole all the way into the halfway mark. Now, what I did last time, and you know, although it was easier for me to actually glue the cords in, I guess it's okay. I guess it's okay. But because it was difficult, it's difficult to stretch the cord over and then over and then over and get it into the hole. Because although I only made this yesterday, this rubber cord has stretched out a bit. Now if I leave it, it will kind of contract again. Okay, I think I said I did a lot of that off screen, so let me go back again. I made this one yesterday, and I did precisely the same thing in terms of measuring the length. I put 1/2 in, I put the half, one, just like this. I did this. And then, because it is rather difficult to take and stretch this all the way over and then noodle it and get it in the hole, it's not the easiest thing to do. I think you can see why. It's just not all that easy to do. It's not impossible, but it's not the simplest thing you're going to do. What is, however, simpler is taking it and not stretching across, but just sort of making a loop like that and then gluing it in. So that's what we're going to do. I thought it wasn't working well yesterday, because yesterday these cords kept trying to kind of separate like that. And I was really worried that they weren't going to hold on to the lid, that they were going to keep moving outward as opposed to staying like so and holding the lid in. But I think it works okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to make another cut, just a bit, not much, just a tiny bit, like so, and like so. Now let's take our glue the end, and then instead of stretching up and over, just kind of run it along the side, put it in, and make sure you push it all the way to the middle. We want the ends of the cord to meet in the middle of the block, like so. So we'll do it on the other side. Bit of glue. Take it. Feed it in and push it all the way to the middle, like so. All right, now you're going to let that dry. And after it's dry, then you can put the lid on and stretch the cord over across the top. So that's it. That's it. That's the little box ring. Now all you have left is to figure out what you're going to put in the box. As you saw, mine, and this cracked me up when I did it. Okay, sometimes I crack myself up. But having a little diamond, this is in every sense a diamond ring, but it looks like a lump of coal. So, yeah, I get a kick out of it. I like it. But I like it because I have a secret. I have a little secret compartment, and there's treasure in there. All right, so thank you very much for watching. Thanks for understanding that I am not a good glue person. Now, if you liked it, if you learned anything from it, I hope you will subscribe, and I hope you'll like, because that is, well, I appreciate it. Now, I do read comments. I don't always answer them. I will try to be better, but I'm also trying to get as much content up as I possibly can. What I do want you to know, though, is that I appreciate them, and I appreciate you for being with me. So until the next time, I'm Donna Cato. Goodbye.